Hi there. Welcome to Bible/Chat. It's good to be with you. We're just having a conversation about how Jason always knows, and it's better for me to not argue because he's smarter than I am. Anyway, Jason, how are you?
We just already said that.
Okay, good. Last time we talked about 1 Corinthians 13, and we talked about how those revelatory gifts have ceased.
Yeah.
And so the natural question would be, are there any gifts that are still functional in the church today? Yeah. And then the second question that sort of like flows out of that is, how do you find your gifts?
Yeah.
Right? How do you know if you're a new Christian, or maybe you go to a new church, or you're not sure what your spiritual gifts are?
Yeah.
Do you take a spiritual gifts test? What do you have to do to find them?
No tests. I think the test is lived out in the real life of the church. But before that, in terms of gifts, I think we would say, as we've been talking about, there are sign gifts which are spectacular, and then they attest to the validity of revelation. Like that man or that person is speaking the words of God. And so prophecy, tongues, healing, things like that. Yeah. Confirmed it.
Yeah,
we would say that those gifts, according to 1 Corinthians 13:8, which you so wonderfully led us through, have ceased, right?
Yeah.
But doesn't mean those other gifts are not in operation.
Yeah.
The other ones that are not sign or spectacular gifts. One evidence of that is in 1 Peter. In 1 Peter chapter 4, verse 10. It's funny because right above it talks about like loving one another, being hospitable, really practical things, right?
Yeah, totally.
You show love by being hospitable without complaining, without begrudgingly doing it. And then the very next verse says, as each one has received a special gift, right? Employ it in serving one another as good stewards of the manifold grace of God. Whoever speaks, and now this is where the gifts are divided into two categories. Yeah. Whoever speaks, so teaching gifts is to do as one who is speaking the utterances of God. But then the person who serves, you do it by the strength that God supplies, so that God's glorified through Christ in all things, right? So you have these two categories, two like big pools of gifts. Yeah. One is serving, one is teaching. One might be more upfront, have to do with like unfolding scripture and counseling and applying it and exhorting and preaching and teaching, those kinds of things. Yeah. And the other one has to do with all the other things that go into like things like hospitality, and things like doing behind the scenes ministry. But both are loving one another, right? And both are gifts of the Lord. So the New Testament doesn't have an exhaustive list of gifts. Yeah, it doesn't say, well, there's a gift of this. It doesn't go down the list like that. And so to tie into the second question, then how do you know? How do you find out? Yeah. We would say, well, can you serve? With teaching, we could talk about that maybe in another video, but the Bible calls us to love one another, calls us to lots of one another's, right? And so what we would say is that as you're in a church and you're plugged in, or you're wanting to get plugged in, you want to exercise your gifts, and you want to know what they are, even discern them, we would say, well, what are the opportunities before you that the church has? Totally. God works through the church, works through the elders of the church. Serve away, and you'll find out soon enough. And the thing is, it's not just subjectively you'll know, but objectively it'll have a spiritual impact on people's lives, on the life of the church. Like the church will be built up, and the people, and especially like the leaders, the elders, can affirm that. Yeah. Wow, that guy's really good at administration. Yeah. That guy's really good at evangelism. Yeah. Whatever it is, and they'll see it and affirm it. And so I think we don't have to worry so much about what's my gift. What we should worry about is loving people and seeking to just serve in whatever capacity God opens up for us in the church. And
that's
then
awesome.
Objectively, it'll be confirmed. And I think subjectively, you'll be serving joyfully. Yeah. There'll be a true spiritual happiness.
You'll enjoy it,
not begrudgingly.
So yeah. I just as a illustration of that, when we first came to FBC, the church was very small. I wasn't the pastor, obviously. I was a realtor, but we first came to FBC, and the guy who was the pastor at the time, John Coe, he said, "Hey, you play guitar? Do you want to lead worship?" And I sing like a dying cow, right? So he was like, "Hey, try it," Yeah. And I tried it. I went 90 days. and John was like, "Are you enjoying this?" And I was like, "No, it's terrible." And he was like, "Yeah, it's hard for us too."
Subjectively and objectively.
He was like, "This just isn't the direction we want to go."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Hey, man, more power to you. No problem." And it was like very quickly that didn't work. Right. And then we started teaching. I started teaching 2s and 3s, and then that was really what the Lord wanted me to do.
Unbegrudged, right?
Yeah. It was
there's
great.
Joy.
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely.
So anyway, very good. Well, thanks so much. Yeah, thanks. I hope that's helpful.